Hello everybody and welcome to Crushing Comics Live. I'm your host, Krisis with a K, and I'm here to talk to you about the Comics Week that was and the Comics Week that will be. Why am I here to do that? Well, I read just about every in-continuity comic from DC and Marvel, plus I sample all of the number ones that seem interesting from every indie, big and small, and I read a lot of those indie series as well. I'm probably one of the people that you know who has the largest pull lists, and so I have a lot of comics to talk about, and one of the reasons I read them all is so that you don't necessarily have to. This is a pilot episode. I won't necessarily be back next week. I'm testing out some stuff. I'm testing the format. I'm testing some technology, and I want to test what you think about it. So definitely leave feedback here in the live chat, or if you watch afterwards in the comments below. Today I'm going to give a lightning round of reviews of the comics that were out last week. That was on the 8th and 9th of June, a preview of what I'm excited about for this week, although not necessarily my whole pull list, and that will include new collections that are of things that I've read, because if I've read everything, I pretty much can recommend any new collection that's coming out that's got great material. Plus, I do have an unusual haul that just arrived on my doorstep, and I have it just off camera right now, so I will share that with you at some point as well. As I was setting this all up, I was thinking about the idea of appointment television, because when those of us who are a little bit older, we used to watch TV at a certain time, and I guess that still exists, right? I haven't done it since 2004, quite frankly. But sometimes there's some Game of Thrones caliber hit, and everybody tunes in at the same time, and they live tweet it, and that's a thing, right? I see a lot of people on Twitter do that for wrestling. Wrestling, I guess, is still appointment television. But I was thinking about this is kind of like appointment YouTube, because usually it's asynchronous. Like I put up a video, people watch it when they watch it. They go up at a certain time, but it doesn't really matter if you're there at that time or not. So this is my attempt at making appointment YouTube, and to make it about appointment comics, because I want to talk about the comics that are like at the top of my pull every week. Either I anticipated they'd be that great, or it turned out that they were that great and arresting. Because right now I mostly just talk about X-Men in terms of new comics on the channel, and I love X-Men, but that is like a tiny sliver of all of the comics I read in a month. I think it's under 10% of my comics a month, maybe under 7%, and there's a lot of X-Men comics. So without any further ado, I'm going to go through last week's pulls and talk about what I loved, didn't love, and what I recommend from it. And we're going to start with DC. DC now, of course, releases on Tuesdays. It means we all have to get a head start on DC comic books. I like it because it gives me a whole day to focus just on that one publisher. And scrolling down DC's comics from last week that I picked up anyway, there's this and I'm going to use the format of my old, what did I call it? Marvel in a Minute. So I have 60 seconds tops to talk about each one of these books. Hopefully much more brisk than that, right? So last week, Batman the Detective. This is the series from Tom Taylor and Andy Kubert. It's also got great colors. I'll have to pull that up and see what the color says so I can credit them too. I have not been super impressed with this. Like, it says Batman the Detective. I don't know how much detective work it really has. He's in London, he's doing stuff, it's got Ducard in it, but it's kind of, and this last week's issue number 3 was pretty much a whole history of Batman's entanglement with Ducard, which was interesting, but it kind of just felt like a retelling of something we've probably seen before. And the colors, although the colors are beautiful, I will say, from Brad Anderson, I believe, they're just like got a little bit too much shine on Andy Kubert's art. I want to see something a little bit more textured on Andy Kubert usually. So that has been falling a bit short for me. It's just not all the way there. Beautiful pencils from Kubert though, and great inks. There were a couple great panels from Sandra Hope last week that I was like, wow, this is some beautiful inking. Next up is Batman Urban Legends number 4. This was absolutely, without a doubt, my pick of the week for DC last week. If you have not been following Batman Urban Legends, it is an anthology book. It doesn't have all that much Batman. It's kind of like Batman World, Batman Universe, or we could call it Gotham Urban Legends, maybe more accurately. The lead story has been Red Hood by Chip Zdarsky with art from, I believe, Eddie Barrows and also Marcus Toe. It has been incredible, especially after reading Red Hood by the same author for so many years. I mean, it's been from 2011 to the beginning of 2021 that Scott Lobdell was the only author reading him. Or writing him primarily. It's fun to read Red Hood by somebody else, and this story is a banger. I love it. Also, it usually has 2 middle stories. One that's a one-shot, and the one was a Batwing one-shot by the new actor of Batwing. Actually wrote the story to come out on the day they announced him as the actor as Batwing. That's great, DC PR. Good job. And then the I forget what was the other story. I really liked it. There's another story that I really liked. I have to learn to make better notes for this, I think, is what I'm coming to. But then the final story is this this ongoing grifter story by Matt Rosenberg. And spoiler, it brings in another Wildstorm character. I'm a huge, huge, huge Wildstorm fan, so that was incredibly satisfying. Oh, I remember that third story. It was a Tim Drake story that was also really good, with really good art. So that was my pick of the week from DC last week, for sure. You can't just buy any issue, because the one main story, well, you could, but the Red Hood story is serialized all the way through, starting from number 1. Although this issue has, I guess, 2 kind of standalone things, but then even that grifter story is ongoing too. Okay. Am I talking too fast? I can see your chats, by the way. I don't know if I'll be able to like respond to them and talk at the same time the way I do when I guest star in Near Mint Condition, but you know, I can multitask. We can try. The next one up was DC Pride, number 1. I have some really mixed feelings about when DC does these prides and voices of specials, because DC has a vast array of characters and creators to tap for these specials, but more often than not, they are not the creators and characters that are getting regular feature across all of DC comics, and I definitely felt that way last month for the Asian Heritage Month, and for DC Pride, I felt very, very similar. Also, I don't know that any of these stories were that great. Like, none of them made me go like, ooh, I'm definitely going to keep reading a series of this character when this character comes out. I really did enjoy the series, the story in DC Pride about Dreamer, which was actually written by the actor that plays Dreamer on TV. Notice how DC is doing that more? I think that's smart. Like, if you've got a multimedia property and you have an actor who probably has more fans online than your comic book has in terms of the floppy issue month to month, have the actor get involved. Let's see some Tom Hiddleston Loki stories, right? I think that would be cool. So, DC Pride, I can't super recommend it. Look, if you took pride in it and were excited by it, I'm excited for you. I just didn't think the stories were worth that massive $10 price tag. Detective Comics 1037. This run has been really heating up. Mariko Tamaki is fantastic. I really like that it's a detective story. It's a mystery. That's cool. However, this traded out the penciler thus far, Dan Mora, beautiful, also the penciler of Once and Future, for the pencils of Victor Bogdanovich. It just wasn't as good. It was fine, but it didn't have that like heart-stopping quality that Detective Comics has had so far. So I can recommend you jump on this new Tamaki beginnings of Detective Comics. We're kind of still in the middle of an arc. Nothing ended. I think they just needed a chance to swap out a penciler. And it was good, but I didn't love it to death. Far Sector number 12 was next. This is the last issue of the stunning 12-issue maxi series, and that is by writer, I want to make sure I get her initials right, N.K. Jemisin. She's a award-winning, super famous fantasy novelist. Far Sector for a lot of 2020 was bar none the best book DC was putting out. I mean, there were no close competitors. It was totally, totally amazing. I do think it kind of declined a little bit towards the end, and here's why. I think as a novelist, Jemisin is used to having had all of the characters on the page and being able to say, this person does this person faints this way, there's an explosion and it hurts this person. And on a comics page, no matter how incredible, amazing, mind-blowing Jamal Campbell's art is, you just can't give that much narrative assistance to the reader on the comic page as you can in a novel. So this was a huge finale. It was a massive blowout. It resolved things in physical combat and resolved things emotionally, but I kind of just felt like I wanted to read it as a novel and it was not that great as a comic book. On the whole, I would absolutely still recommend picking up the Far Sector collection when it comes out. It was fantastic. The art was beyond stunning, and I think it's going to read really well as a single reading experience. The Joker number 4. I've been really into this Joker series from Tiny and March, but I have to say that, oh good, definitely get the Far Sector when it gets collected, Ted. That I highly recommend it. I think people should definitely check it out. Okay, back to the Joker. Joker number 4. I've been liking Joker. Here's the secret. If you have not been reading, it is the series finale for Far Sector, by the way. That's the end. It's not renewed. She is actually appearing as of the week prior in Green Lantern right now. So that we don't know what happened between Far Sector and Green Lantern, but we know that she's been merged into the main DC universe, even though, fun fact, Far Sector began as a young animal book and was branded that way the whole way. But she, this Lantern, was her name, Jo, is absolutely part of the main DC universe for sure. Okay, got to get better at like noticing the chats and answering the chats before I start talking about the next thing. But now we're really talking about Joker. Am I talking way, way too fast? I feel like this is me on 2x speed, but just normal. The Joker, number 4. This is from Tiny and March, and here's the secret of this series. It hasn't really been about the Joker. The Joker has been about Gordon. Gordon gets sent to find the Joker, and that's what it's been about, except for in Joker number 4, they finally intersect, and it's kind of got a lot of Joker and a lot of action. In a way, this kind of like brought me down a little bit. I was really enjoying it when it was just James Gordon as like, kind of James Bond, globe-trotting, looking for the Joker. Actually being confronted with the Joker and a bunch of other supervillains made it seem actually weirdly a little bit more commonplace. But it's still a good series, and I think the #1 issue is amazing. So if you like the idea of a Gordon-focused series that's about Joker and all of his crimes, I would say pick up the Joker #1, see if you like it. I don't think I would say jump in midstream, but I've really been enjoying it. This is the first issue that I've been like a little softer on. I may be doing this as a weekly thing. Depends on what you think. I might need to retool it. I might set it at a different time. But I really would like a way to get all of the images on screen for you. I can do sharing here, but I'd have to download all of the images first, which I'm probably incapable of, but baby steps. There's also a Joker digital short out last week. I think it was free to read on DC Universe. I think that's how I read it. The Joker Presents a Puzzle Box by Matthew Rosenberg. Interesting how Rosenberg's doing a lot more of DC work right now. It was fine. The Joker's being interrogated, and clearly he's not a reliable narrator, and that's what it was. I don't know. It was a very short digital chapter. Maybe it'll be great. Maybe not. Hard to say. There's also a digital chapter out for this digital first book, Truth and Justice. These are like continuity light stories that are coming in 2 to 4 chapters about DC characters, and then they get compiled into a single issue. There have been some good stories in this Truth and Justice book. There was an unbelievable one earlier in the run. I want to say it was a really good Superman story that just like blew me away. This one, chapter 15, resolved a trio of stories about Batwoman. It was fine. Like, she's hunting a monster in a small town because she wants to get away. It just wasn't, like, that great. And I'm like, where's our Batwoman book? She's got a TV show. She's one of your featured female heroes. And it's Pride Month right now, so just announce the darn Batwoman ongoing, DC. I don't know how you can't sustain an ongoing for a badass military-trained bat person who hunts monsters. How is there not an ongoing comic for that? I don't know. And then finally, what usually is top of pull for me from DC is Wonder Woman 773. This is currently being written by Becky Cloonan with, I believe, Michael Conrad co-writing, that's true, and art from Travis Moore, which is like heart-stoppingly gorgeous, partially just because the colors are absolutely beautiful. And who is the colorist on this? They don't. I'm using League of Comic Geeks just for quick reference here, but they don't always have all. It's a wiki, so you get what you get. Tamara Bonvillain, who I think is my favorite colorist. It is a crime against humanity and comics that Tamara Bonvillain has not been nominated for an Eisner this year. I think just for her work on Once and Future alone, she should be nominated for an Eisner. But Wonder Woman 773, here's the thing. This Wonder Woman relaunch, she was kind of like killed at the end of all the death metal stuff. And so when we launched into Infinite Frontier, she has been separated from all the rest of the DC heroes. And she's going to go through all these other pantheons, I think is the general idea, which sounds really cool. But this first arc, which I think has been 3 or 4 issues, it was all in Asgard. But Diana doesn't have her memory, so it feels a lot just like Sif. It just feels like a random Sif comic. She's drawn like Sif. It's got Thor and Odin on the World Tree and the little squirrel god. So it really just kind of felt like this bootleg Thor comic. It was gorgeous. It was a lot of fun, but it doesn't feel like Wonder Woman. And Wonder Woman is my favorite DC heroine. Heroines are heroes. So kind of just like sad trombone a little bit because it didn't feel distinctly Wonder Woman. But you know what? Everybody gets their opening 4 issues that they can have where the hero has amnesia. Now let's see what they deliver to me now that she doesn't have amnesia. I'm absolutely still picking it up. It's still gorgeous. I haven't looked ahead to see who the artist is going to be, but Conrad's art, or not Conrad, he's the writer. Moore's art, Travis Moore's art has been absolutely stunning thus far. So that was DC last week. There were a couple of DC books maybe that I didn't pick up because they're kind of like out of continuity books or books that are just digital first of a very spurious continuity. Sorry, I don't read everything. Although if you want my opinion, it's possible that I have actually sampled those books along the way and just decided it wasn't good enough to keep reading. So you can always ask. Now we're going to move on to Marvel. Okay, let's see how well I pre-prepared this list. Okay, Marvel Comics from last week. Here we go. I'm going to try to go a little faster, but shoot questions as you've had them for the people who are watching live. And you can always comment after if you have questions, because I always read the comments and try to respond. The Amazing Spider-Man number 68. I am a non-fan of this Nick Spencer Spider-Man run, but I do think we've reached a point where he's established enough of his own continuity that it's actually fun because he's referring to his own stuff. I've seen some people on Twitter be like, eye roll, why aren't you referring to older stuff? It's kind of like a little pretentious to like have all these footnote references to your own run. I think it actually pays us off for sticking with the run for this long, honestly. And this is like the first time that I'm like, there have been some interesting things happening. But Nick Spencer, it's almost like he's avoiding writing actual Spider-Man. It's really uncanny. He seems to really have Peter Parker on the panel as little as he possibly can in every given issue, which is very strange. But what are you going to do? So I can't recommend it, but at least it seems like this chameleon thing is going somewhere. I personally personally like Peter Parker's sister as a character, and I know that's a relatively new development, so classic Spidey fans aren't always into it, but she's in the story, and I think that's why I'm like a little bit more interested than I have been. Children of the Atom #4, if you watched this in Week in X, you've already heard that that was a skip for me, and you've already heard my rationale. I think this would play great as a Champions book, as a New Warriors book, as a Marvel Youths, a Young Allies book. I question if we really need it marketed as an X-Men book when maybe some of the characters are mutants, but it's much more about culture and feeling like you don't belong and feeling like mutant culture is somewhere where you do belong. Maybe Vita Ayala is going to bring it around. I still have a hope. I always open every comic hoping it's going to be a good issue, but it's kind of just treading water for me. It wasn't even that thrilling, even if I take off my X-Men glasses. So that's that. Conan the Barbarian 22. Jim Zub has got this arc going where Conan has gone to the Hyperborea, is that what it's called, where he lives in the past, Hyperborean age version of China. There's been a little bit of Orientalism, which I'm not a huge fan of in kind of making them the exotic people, but I do see Zub trying to be conscientious of that, and they're all treating Conan as if he's exotic, although that also kind of smacks of Orientalism. It's actually got like a fun turn of events here where he gets brought before the Emperor. He's been carrying around this cursed sword that he goes into a Wolverine rage whenever he uses it, but he knows he's got to get it back to this place, but how does he get it back safely? It was fun if you've been following the arc. If you're going to pick up Conan to check it out, I would either say pick it up at the beginning of Zub on Conan or just wait for the next issue, because this kind of started a new status quo story right at the end that's clearly going to keep on rolling. Ooh, the one non-X-Men thing you should read, and right now I'm obsessed with Batman. I think Tynion's Batman has this crazy neon late 90s energy. It's wild, it's fun, it's imaginative. I think that's great. I think Iron Man is amazing. I'm about to get to it in 2 more books. Iron Man is, I think, my favorite comic book Marvel's putting out right now, above the entire X-line and everything else I like from Marvel. So hang on for like 90 seconds and I'll talk more about that. Excalibur #21. You saw me talk about this on This Week in X. It actually kind of felt like it was good enough. Because it really brought this Britain thing to a head for the first time in a while. It brought the Richter thing to a head. It's got forward motion. I think a lot of these X books have been suffering after X of Swords and kind of treading water, waiting for this gala. And it's like, you cannot just keep us treading water from event to event. That really starts to feel like 90s X books. You got to give us books that matter in between. And to be fair, there were 2 Excalibur issues that really mattered in between. One of them was the Betsy in an alternate universe. One of them was the Malice confrontation. So it seems like in a way this could be ticking up, but I really am curious to see where Howard's going to take it after this, and if she's maybe going to refresh the cast a little bit now that Rogue is departing for the main X-Men title. So let's see. Oh, now I get to talk about Iron Man. Okay, so let me be upfront. This issue of Iron Man was my least favorite one of the run so far. That said, I am obsessed with Christopher Cantwell's Iron Man. Plus, it has had amazing artwork from Cafu, and when Cafu doesn't do the artwork, the colors are maintained by Frank D'Armata in a really amazing way. I thought it was Matt Wilson at first, because Matt Wilson does these very textured colors. He makes sure nothing is just like a solid color wash. They always, if you go in, have like a little bit of a grain or roughness to them, and Iron Man has, and it really has linked up when other artists are drawing it. But this week was Cafu. It's a really deep dive on Korvac and his history and continuity, which I found a little bit dull. I think you could have intercut some of this stuff with some of the stuff that was very Iron Man focused last week and made a better comic. It's this push and pull, right? You want to make each issue satisfying, but you also want to make the whole reading experience satisfying, and you want to make sure that there's like a beginning, a middle, and end to every issue. And I just feel like this one issue maybe didn't quite get there. Still a really enjoyable book, though, and probably my top recommendation for Marvel. You can pick up on this Iron Man run right from the beginning. No pre-reading. It tells you all you need to know. The art has been spectacular. It's written really well. Cantwell, of course, just got done writing the Doctor Doom series, but I know him as a television writer of *Halt and Catch Fire*, which was incredible. Yeah, I see some chat in the live chat about Zdarsky's Daredevil. It's probably my other must-read book from Marvel that's the highest on the pull other than X-Men and other than Iron Man. You will hear me rhapsodize about that if I do a live show on a week that Daredevil comes out. We also had Strange Academy #11. If you have not been following Strange Academy, it's pretty much Harry Potter with Marvel magical characters, but they're all legacy characters that have just been invented. I don't think any of them come from any other run. Scotty Young just kind of made them all up whole cloth for the first issue. It's been okay. I kind of feel like it's a really big crowd of characters and they don't have a lot of distinct things to do. So a lot of what they do is like the Frost Giant did this because he's a Frost Giant. It feels kind of really reductive. Here, with issue 11, I feel like we've finally gone far enough with the characters that it's actually starting to click for me as a cast and not just kind of representative examples of different magic. And this was a murder mystery. It was funny. It had Howard the Duck. Scotty Young wrote a hilarious Howard the Duck. It's Ramos's best art that I've ever seen. I need to go look at who the colorist is, because not only is Ramos's line art beautiful here, but who is doing the colors on this book? Is Ramos doing his own colors? I'm confused. See, this is the risk of me doing this live, but the colors have also been beautiful. So I actually don't know that I can like recommend Strange Academy on the whole, but if you've been thinking about what to do and check out Strange Academy, you can read Strange Academy number 11 and see if you did. Checking in on some of the questions. I love Kieran Gillen's Eternals. It's slow, it's thoughtful, it's very self-referentially amusing, which is Gillen's whole shtick. But I mean, I eagerly read every issue. I know the next issue I think has been delayed, but I don't know that you need to pick it up monthly. I think Eternals is going to read really well as a collection of an arc. So maybe if you're reading it on Marvel Unlimited, that would be a great place to do it. But I have really been enjoying it. Strange Academy is written by Scotty Young. And I only have one more Marvel book for the week, but you've heard me talk about it already. It is X-Men, number 21. It was fine. I think it did what it needed to do. I actually thought it was kind of fun to see Hickman write a party issue, like a lightweight, funny haha party issue, which is not usually Hickman's shtick. So good for him. And the art was nice. It was an art jam by 4 different artists, but it wasn't really, there were no fireworks. I mean, there were fireworks, but there were no fireworks. I think if you've been waiting to see if you need to dip your toe back into X-Men, read the Planet Size issue coming up this week. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. Okay, that was Marvel pulls. Now I'm going to take a breath, and I'm going to talk about my indie pulls. Here's the thing about indie. I really do sample everything. When I say indie, I do not just mean Image Comics, Boom Comics, IDW. I will go down that whole gosh darn previews list, and if there is a comic number 1 that looks kind of interesting and it's from some publisher I've never heard of before, I will get that number 1 if it is available digital. I only read digital. So for some of these, I'm going to mention they were on my poll, but they have not turned up on Comixology as of the last time I looked a night or two ago. So that might be why I didn't read them. There's plenty of things I've dropped already. My standard on Indie Comics is I will read 2 issues, and then if it's not really grabbing me by 2 issues, life has got to move on, unless it's like a creator that I really know and who has a reputation with me. So I'm going to try to move through this quickly. Alice in Leatherland from Black Mass Studios has not appeared on Comixology yet, so I haven't read it. Baby Teeth number 18. It was kind of lightweight, but Kate, this is really fun. I like any kind of like Antichrist, Child of Satan kind of books, and Kate's and Gary Brown have been delivering from the very beginning. I think you should just read it all in one go. The thing with Baby Teeth is the issues take like 3 seconds to read, and so Baby Teeth kind of just flies by. It's really hard to justify keeping up with it weekly, which I do, because it just doesn't feel like a whole lot of content. Birthright number 50, absolutely my pick of the week. I love this whole series. I could not recommend it any more highly. I have the whole thing on my shelf right here. It's an amazing comic. I really don't understand why Saga got all the attention. I mean, I do, but Birthright is really similar. It's about family dynamics. It's about a fantastical world. It's about trying to like reunite and be together when the world wants to keep you apart. It has amazing, incredible art. The artist on this, I forget if Adriano Lucas is the artist or colorist. He's the artist. His line work is incredible. Or maybe he is the colorist, and Andre Bresson is the artist. Let me look at that more quickly so I credit the right amazing person. Yeah, Bresson is the artist and Lucas is the colorist, because he's been coloring some other stuff lately. I just love it. I couldn't recommend it any more highly. And here's the cool thing Birthright did. It ended its main story at issue 45, and then it gave itself 5 whole issues of denouement to just like coast to a stop. And I think that was so smart. It took the pressure off of the last issue to like do this big finale thing, and it gave us 5 issues to just like settle down with the characters, and I thought that was really wise, really fun. I've been meaning to read Carmine from Action Lab, but I have not picked that up yet. It is on Comixology, though. I also have Cherry Blackbird on my list from Scout, but Scout, you've got to go to their website to buy PDFs, and so I tend to just do it in chunks every month or two, because I just cannot be fussed with doing that on some website other than Comixology every month. Darkwing is a month behind on Comixology now, so I think I've read through number 4. Heavy Metal has been putting out these really fun, kind of rangy sci-fi series. Darkwing has an awesome concept, and the concept might be enough to carry it for you. It's basically what if a whole planet was a spaceship, and it was just flying from place to place, star to star, absorbing solar energy and seeing if there is a way for them to stay in that star system. But I just feel like the character work is not there with that concept, and the lettering is really distracting. Every character has their own colored lettering corresponding to their outfits, which is nice when they're on like the comm system, but it's overwhelming when they're all on the same page together. This letterer, I don't want to call out by name, but I almost never like their letters. And it's funny because I was like, oh, these letters are tough, man. I can hardly see what's going on. Sure enough, that was the letterer, so yikes. I had Death by Life from Antarctic, not up on Comixology yet. Die number 17 is my pick of the week. That is why it was the cover image for this week. Die, if you ever do RPGs with friends, if you roleplay with friends, even if you've done role-playing games on screen like Final Fantasy, I really think this idea of placing yourself into a fantastical world is going to click for you. Stephanie Hahn's art is amazing. Kieran Gillen is so witty, and this issue in particular just turns the whole concept on its ear in the most pleasing and hilarious possible way. I loved it so much. It was 5 stars. I laughed the entire time. It has some Lovecraftian stuff in it, and Gillen, of course, pokes crazy fun at that, as you would imagine that he would. Die gets a little soft in the middle arcs. It's only going to be 20 issues, supposedly, so we're only 3 away from the end. At this point, do I think you should catch up? Not if you haven't started yet. Maybe I don't know if that first Die volume is maybe on Comixology Unlimited by this point, but the first volume is a really fun read, and you can read it on its own and enjoy it. But I think this is one that's going to be really satisfying to read all and done. Somebody just commented they hope that it gets a deluxe hardcover treatment. Me too. You know that I do not have a policy, if you watch this channel, of buying brand new comics physically anymore. That's it. Like, the gates are closed. I'm just trying to fill in my Marvel backlog, and that's the end. But if Die came out in oversized hardcover all in one, I would absolutely 100% buy that comic book. I also read Dynamite Lives from Dynamite. Dynamite had a year there, I think it was 2019, that everything was good. So I just started buying everything by Dynamite. And here's the thing. I've discovered I like certain comics from Dynamite, and then certain things they're kind of just putting out because they know some 5,000 people will buy it, and that's the way that it is. Dynamite has a exclamation point after Die. Dynamite! So that's why it comes right after Die. It's kind of like their version of what's the Tom Taylor zombie DC thing, Deceased. It's the Dynamite version of Deceased. And at first it was really fun because it took the Dynamite heroes, and they're all licensed heroes. Like, Dynamite doesn't tend to own them. It's like all of these heroes from other comic companies that now have given the license to them, including Vampirella, which although I think maybe Dynamite owns a piece of Vampirella. But anyway, Dynamite's first series that came out earlier this year, super delicious, really fun, really made good use of all these pulp comic characters to mix them up in a zombie environment. However, in this Dynamite Lives #1, this second series, it introduces some new licensed characters, one of which is Ash from Evil Dead, right? That's what it's called. And I don't have any affinity for that character. I don't really know who he is, and it doesn't introduce him at all. He just starts cracking jokes and you're supposed to follow it. And it was a huge turnoff for me because I'm like, oh, is this what this book is now? It's kind of just getting people to enjoy when their person showed up. So I kind of just tuned out. Sorry. I'm probably going to drop it. It's not so good, and I don't love zombie books that much that I feel like I need to keep reading it. Die, some folks in the chat are asking, it's going to be 20 issues because it's about a 20-sided die. Oh, my D&D dice are not in this room with me. But it's about a 20-sided die, so there's going to be 20 issues. So there are 3 more issues to go. I also read Eve #2 from Boom Studios. This is by Victor Laval, who's a fantastic writer. Some whisperings have been he's going to be writing an X-book soon. This just feels like a comic I've read already. It's about a girl. Her father leaves her behind on Earth to kickstart Earth because a plant/zombie apocalypse has taken over. And the other thing is the covers are bait and switch. And I hate when covers are a bait and switch. When the cover art is super good and then the internal art is when you're an indie series, I think you should start out with your actual cover art for the first issue. I really feel strongly about that. So I just couldn't get excited about it. I tried. I might give it one more issue because I love Laval so much, but it just feels like such a story I've already heard told. One indie book I've not read from last week, but I need to, probably still, is The Good Asian. I read issue #1. It's a crime noir book set in, I forget what decade, 1910s or 20s, San Francisco, I want to say. I don't love noir all that much. And but I want to read it because it's got a great historical quality. It's well researched. It has great back matter. But I'm really dragging my brain along to get interested in noir. So I'm going to give it 1 or 2 more issues just because it's fascinating and I like the historical aspect of it. But it might not be for me long term. I also, you might not know this, I read every Zenoscope comic. This is one of those things that if you follow me on Twitter, you know. Why? Here's the thing. Zenescope has all of these cheesecakey covers. Their actual comics are not like that. They're pretty much just all female protagonists who maybe have like one or two slightly TNA shots an issue. But people think that they're like, you know, like nudie comics. They are not. They're just a whole line of female heroines in a shared universe. So like, why would I not? Like that, right? That's like my total jam. So I read everything Grimm, but last week Grimm had they have this quarterly spotlight thing they're doing this year because everybody's into anthology books. Hercules Payne versus the Scorpion Queen. It was marginal. I'll tell you when there's a good Zenescope book. There's one coming up next week, but no. Also, I've been reading James Bond, Agent of Spectre from Dynamite. I gave up on following James Bond. I like him okay, but those series that were in 2019 by Greg Pak and Jeff Parker were so good, and then I haven't really loved it since then. But this is by Christos Gage. I like Christos Gage. I always say that I think he deserves more attention. He should be famous on his own. He should have an indie gig. So I'm like, well, here's his indie gig. Am I going to show up or not? So I showed up, and it's good. It's good. It's Bond as a quadruple, maybe quintuple agent. He goes to investigate Blofeld, but Blofeld asks him to do something for him so that Bond will get something he wants. So Bond does it, but then he aligns himself. Well, I don't want to spoil it, but it's like Bond just says yes to everything. It's Bond's month of yes, where he just says yes to everything. And Gage brings it to a hilarious and action-filled head in Agent of Spectre #4. Probably the issue I liked the most so far, and really made it worth it for me. I'm seeing some chat about Eve. I'm not saying it's a bad comic. It's just I read so many comics. My pull list is usually between 180 and up comics a month. Individual issues, not titles, because some of them double ship. If you're going to do one of these concepts like the abandoned Earth or zombies or plants have taken over, you've got to do it all the way. Like, I cannot get excited about that concept if you're just going to give me a mild version of it, because I read all of the comics. Like, that's the thing. If you're a creator who has a name brand and you can pull people to read you just because you're that creator, you don't have to do the best version of that story, because it's fine if you don't. People are reading you because you're that creator. But for me, who voraciously just reads everything, if you're not bringing the best version of that, then I'm like, sorry, bro. And so Eve, I'm going to give it one more because I do really like Victor Laval. But if it was anybody other than Victor Laval, I probably actually wouldn't be reading it. So that's a little unfair. The Maniac of New York wrapped up from Aftershock Comics last week. I hated this book. I know it has a lot of fun people liking it, yay, whatever, on social media. I just thought it was friggin' dumb. There's a serial killer who can't be killed. It's the movie Jason, but on the New York subway, but as the serial killer, as a metaphor for COVID, because eventually everybody just gets over it and goes about their lives, even though it's killing hundreds of people all the time still. It just doesn't do it for me. The art from Andrew Muti, I know some people really, really like it. I find it really hard to follow. I find the action hard to track. I don't want to ever be mean about a comic book that I don't like, and call me out if I'm being mean. But I really think it's important to explain why we don't like things. If I do another live, maybe I'll give my monologue on this idea of toxic positivity in comics, where you can only say nice things about comics and you're not supposed to warn people off. Look, if you like horror movies, if you like Friday the 13th, if you like that kind of painterly BD European style art, you might dig this. But if you're hearing all these things and you're like, what's the hook? That's the hook. I already told you what the hook was. And if you're not hooked, you're not hooked. Haven't read Out of Body Experience yet from Antarctic Press. I just haven't gotten to it. Proctor Valley Road. This is one that we need to have a chat about, folks. Proctor Valley Road. It is Grant Morrison co-writing with somebody else who I'm not familiar with. Let me look up the name. Alex Child. Not a lot of knowledge of Alex Child. And here's the thing. It is so wickedly funny. Proctor Valley Road is like Giant Days crossed with Ghostbusters. It's these four girls. It's set in, I guess, the late 60s, because they all want to go to a Janis Joplin concert. And their town is like this awful, like, podunk little town. And there's all these awful, racist, sexist people that they're dealing with. But they're also just super rude and terrible. It's not like making them out to be like, oh, these girls, they're so sweet. No, they're also awful people a lot of the time. And they try to make money by leading people on a ghost tour, but it turns out ghosts are real. It's riotously funny. It's got a lot of in-jokes if you know the music and politics of the late 60s, and it's followable. It's got this heart to it that Morrison comics don't always have, and I don't know if that's Morrison growing older or if that's Alex Child bringing their sentiment to it, but I'm telling you, if you like Giant Days and you wish they could have investigated ghosts, you should read this comic book. It is one that I am absolutely happy to go to bat for. That's what we got to talk about, the good ones and the bad ones. I haven't read S Factor 1 from Action Lab Comics yet. Action Lab's another one that people just ignore. I think they think it's all Kitty Comics or all TNA, because they do have a Kitty Comics line and they do have of some TNA books, but they're just a good indie that puts out like solid 5 and 6 issue series, and it kind of bums me out to see no chatter about them. Like, if you like comics, like all comics, try things sometimes. So Tarna, this heavy metal seems to always release digitally like a month after it comes out physically. And so, which is fine. I guess that means maybe more people buy it physically. Little me in New Zealand, it means I don't get to these comics until a month after they're released. I've been loving Tarna. It's kind of like a little bit of a Red Sonja thing. She's just this like barely clad space lady warrior. She kind of like teleports in and out of different places, but the places are all kind of sword and sorcery, but there's also technology. There's the second series Heavy Metal has done for her in the past year, and it's been just really fun. Like, I don't read these comics for the TNA. I read them because I think there should be women who are barbarians and cut crap into pieces, just like there's Conan. Why? Why can't I have women doing that too? And so from that perspective, Tarna is a lot of fun. And if you like that kind of stuff, read it. The art has been really cool, super psychedelic. It's been fun to read. And I think is it Stephanie Phillips writing it? Let me see who the writer is. It is Stephanie Phillips. And Stephanie Phillips is heating up right now. If you have not been paying attention, she's been getting better and better on more and more titles. So check out a Stephanie Phillips title. And if you want to read Red Sonja in space, kind of as like a renegade barbarian Green Lantern, read Tarna. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I dropped it. I hate Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'm sorry. This is one of my, I'm not going to be mean. I'm going to be balanced. I started reading Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles around issue 86. I'd never read it before. It just looked interesting. I picked it up. I mean, I know who they are, clearly. I was alive in the 80s. Spoiler. And it was amazing. Up until issue 100, it was my number 2 comic of 2019, in front of every other comic I read out of 2,500 comics in total, not series, issues. But Sophie Campbell, who has drawn it on many occasions, and I think even co-plotting, took it over with issue 101. And it is just a nap for me. And I have hung on for 17 issues, and I just cannot get with it. It's just kind of become this slice of life comic. Like, they have coffee, they talk about stuff, they have a battle of the bands. And here's the thing, I like slice of life comics. But if you're going to build up to a battle of the bands, which we've built up to for a whole arc here, and I, as you may recall, have been in bands and have done this kind of thing, it better be good. It better be a reward. And this didn't feel rewarding at all. It didn't feel like we got the closure that was promised to us. And this book is just trundling along into an 18th issue where there's no heart to it anymore that comes with a little bit of an edge the way that it did before. Now it's just all heart. It just feels like My Little Pony with Ninja Turtles. I'm sorry. It makes me really angry. Maybe that was a little bit mean, but I'm finally dropping it. I'm still going to pick up the annuals because when the original writers come back, I think I'm going to really like it. But I've liked Sophie Campbell and other things, but I just cannot with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Back to Dynamite, Vampirella. Gosh, this is taking a long time. You got to tell me, what do you want to see different the next time? Like, should I try to get all the covers queued up so you could see the covers? Should I only talk about things that I liked a lot and disliked a lot? I don't know, but because this seemed like it's taking forever, but you're still watching, so maybe it's great. Vampirella versus Purgatory. Again, I like 90s bad girl comics. I'm a fan. This has Vampirella teaming up with Purgatory. I don't know whose creation Purgatory is or who owns her as a character, but it's just fun. This evil demon lady wants to ruin the earth by finding there's like 32 people at any given time who are like truly good people. They're like uncorruptible people that if you leave them on their own, they'll just live great lives. And she's like, what if we ruin them all? And so Vampirella and Purgatory are like trying to put a stop to that, but both for different reasons. The art is just really, really beautiful. It's funny. It's just like a really lightweight heaven and hell kind of thing. And I'm a sucker for heaven and hell stuff. Ray Fox is the writer and doing a really great job. I want to look at who the colorist is. I really have to write down colorists ahead of time because a lot of people don't list them. Salvatore Ayala is the colorist, and the colors have been really beautiful. And for me, a lot of times in a comic, the difference between me hanging on when it's a little bit on the edge or still reading it is when the colors are like, mwah, because I think good colors make a comic really pop. So, okay, covers next time. I'll figure out a way to do it next time. Oh God, captions, y'all are going to kill me. I'll try. And then my final indie pull for last week was Wind by James Tynion. This comic is great. I actually haven't done my All Around the World for it yet. But I have right here I have the DM version of the first collection. It is so good. Every issue is double length. It is a fairy tale about a cloistered city that's trying to maintain normalcy, but there's a fantastical world around it. And this one boy has made his life in the city, but he is part of the fantastical world. And he is named Wind because, I mean, spoiler for the first page of the first issue, he's eventually going to grow wings and be like a harpy person. A harpy person. And so this is about him being hunted down, him having to find his own way in the world, him deciding what it means to have friends and what it means to love somebody. It's got some wonderful queer themes in it that really are welcome to see in a kid's comic book, and it makes me so happy. And also it's just a dang good story. And the art is just so amazing by Michael, I'm not good at saying his last name, so I want to look at it. Michael Dialinus. Michael Dialinus. Really, really good art. I'm a big fan. It's nice because it's YA, but it's like deep enough and horrific enough that you can read it as an adult and it doesn't feel lightweight. That was my poll from last week. I read a lot of comics, y'all. So hopefully you found a couple of things that you liked in there or that you've been curious about in there. I've been seeing your comments on the live chat about like, can we find a way to do covers? I think I can do it. If I put them all in a folder, I could kind of just page through them in order and just have them in alphabetical order. So I'll try that next time I do this. But now, preview, because I probably will do a haul around the world, but this thing just showed up on my steps. I know what it is because I can see through the bubble tape. But it's comics related, but it's not a comic. So sneak preview here, and then I'll do the full haul around the world. Although I might sell it, and we'll get into why I might sell it. But it's the Mind Management board game from Kickstarter. I mean, God, I should do a thumbnail because this looks really cool. It's intense. It's got like a kind of secret player aspect to it where like you plot the plot, but then you can't see what the other person's doing, and you move around and get clues, but the clues maybe help you figure out what's going on. But I think there's also an automated version that you can play on your own because it just says players 1 to 5. Here's the thing about this. 2 things. One is, in the Kickstarter, they started talking about like, oh, we're going to expand it. There's going to be secret envelopes and things you can do, and it's all going to work with an app with QR codes. Never trust somebody when they say that you're going to buy their cool product and it's going to work with an app, because those apps are only going to be worked on for like a year or two while they still care about their Kickstarter. And then when they start breaking or when your new phone doesn't support it anymore, then you can't use that part of the game. So I wrote to them on the Kickstarter. I'm like, I think this is BS. You should not have an app do all that stuff. You should have it be based like do a PDF or an interactive like little piece of your website. Even a website I tend not to trust because websites go away. People forget to re-register them. People redesign. Like I want, when I'm buying a board game, I want an encapsulated story and an encapsulated gameplay experience. And at least give me like an option to print and play something. So that was one. And then the other thing is that Kent got in on this whole NFT thing a month or 2 ago. I'm not going to re-legislate it now, but this idea of giving these one-off digital art pieces to the world, but only one person can buy them, and then they've got to be maintained on the blockchain. I don't want to pass a value judgment on it right now, but it always just annoys me, like, why? Why was that necessary? He made the argument that it was in keeping with mind management, that something would be kind of a read once and destroy kind of thing. Somebody on Reddit actually bought it and shared it, and he said you can share it or you could decide to keep it for yourself. So it's cool that it had that effect, but I kind of was just like eye roll. Like at this point, I bought all of the mind management hardcovers. I don't think they're on my shelf yet. They're some of my favorite hardcovers I've ever purchased. I bought all of Kent's books for a while, but then he also was writing for Bad Idea, and you know what? I kind of just decided that like Kent eventually was a bad idea too. I can't be all in on him anymore. He's just trying my patience. So I'm going to take a look at some gameplay videos online again for the game. If it feels like it's going to get to the table in my house, maybe I'll keep it. The thing is, my kid is obsessed with spy stuff. And even though it says ages 13 and up, board games are usually graded like 2 to 4 years higher because they want to make sure that nobody buys it and says, my kid Billy couldn't figure out how to play this game. So really, usually, if you have a kid who's like good at logic and paying attention and reading, two of the three, logic and reading, paying attention and reading, paying attention to logic, usually a game that's like 2 to 4 years younger, your kid can handle. Like my daughter was playing games for like 6-year-olds when she was 3 because she could pay attention to them. So this is 13, which leads me to believe maybe a 9-year-old can handle it. So, and she's about to turn 8. So if it seems like an 8-year-old might like the game, then I am going to keep it, but that is what I will take a look into. Here's the thing. I am really into board gaming. I don't buy as many of them now just because it's costly to get them in New Zealand, and they take up, if you think these puppies take up a lot of shelf space, board games, whew. But I have a lot of board games. So that could be a component of the live show. Like, I don't know how much I know about board games. I could show off my board game collection. I do have a lot. But, one of my friends here in Wellington is the host, the owner, the proprietor of 3 Minute Board Games, which is his amazing board games channel. I actually go and get to play test some new stuff with him. There's some great New Zealand board game designers, so it's kind of kept me in it here. It was one of the first social connections I made because I met them on Twitter, as I tend to meet a lot of people in my life. So I'm never going to top their board game content, but sometimes I do get games because they recommend them to me, and I could talk about those too. Oh, all right. Well, we talked about last week's poll. We talked about my special haul. Oh, I wanted to talk about what I've been reading this week, and then we'll get into next week's poll, and then we're going to wrap it up, because this has been 45 minutes straight of me talking at the highest possible speed. Also, by the way, I'm all in on Dungeons and Dragons. I can't turn the screen because everything will break and shatter and fall to pieces, but I have every Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition book. I almost started buying 3rd edition books, too, because I liked 3rd edition. I have my original. I can show this because I can reach it. I have my, original 2nd edition advanced books from when I was in, I guess, middle school. And I still love these books. I mean, clearly the Dungeons Master's Guide and the Player's Manual have aged, not only in terms of rules. I mean, who remembers Thecco, right? But in terms of the mechanics. But I still love going through this original Monstrous Manual. It's just, I really like the format. I liked the way that the pictures were on a page and that it was like 1 page per creature. And that it talked a lot about the ecology of each creature. And I thought that was cool. So I've always really loved this original Monstrous Manual, which clearly I've still got bookmarks in. I had never really played a long ongoing D&D game all the way from the early 90s until last year during the pandemic. And I got together with some college friends. It was actually 2 weeks before all the lockdowns started. And they were in Philly. And they were going to get together and do a one-off. And they were like, oh, we should have Peter on video. It'll be fun. Because we played together maybe like 5 times in college. And we got together and played, and then the lockdown happened. They weren't going to keep having me because it was like a big to-do to have me on a video and them all at a table. But then everybody had to be on video. So it's like, things have been equalized. And so then I started DMing actually halfway through the year because the other DM needed a break. He was dealing with a lot with his kids at home and his job and everything. But New Zealand, the lockdown was lightening up. So life was maybe not as stir-crazy here. And so now we play every 2 weeks. It's been over a year. It's been great. It's a huge campaign that we've got our own maps and world and everything. And it's a lot of fun. So I've become a big D&D fan again. I'm huge on D&D Beyond. I love subscribing to D&D Beyond. I think it makes a lot of things I used to hate about D&D easy. Like, now I'll play a cleric. I never wanted to play magic users before because there's always erasing your spell slots and then putting back or doing it with paper clips or something. And now you just click the thing and it comes back the next time you long rest. So anyway, I absolutely could talk a little bit about tabletop RPGs. And plus I have some fun Twitter friends who are really into them and I could bring them along too if we ever wanted to really focus on this. Ooh, yeah. If you guys know of good board game Kickstarters and stuff, I love to hear about them. I'm an addict, actually. That's where a lot of my board games come from. Especially, I'm a huge sucker for 5th edition compatible RPG systems, especially if they have a lot of equipment or monsters, because I love just pulling. I used like this steampunk monster in our campaign. I used a Lovecraftian monster in my campaign that I got from other books. So like if it's like 10 or 20 bucks to get this 400-page PDF of like all these monsters and weapons, I have no physical resistance to that. I will always go in on it. So the next segment, you know what? Like when I finally have this all together, each segment will have like little musical interludes maybe, or like little theme songs, and they'll have like title cards and I mean, use your imagination, right? I kind of would love this to be almost like my late night show, which maybe I could do it later, but in that it's kind of just like there's a monologue, there's music, there's everything. That's kind of my dream, but also all of the comic stuff we've been talking about. So anyway, what I've been reading. So if you follow me on Twitter, that's Crushing Comics on Twitter. My @Krisis is more for semi-professional stuff, so I have it locked right now because I haven't really decided what that's going to be going forward. But all my comic stuff is Crushing Comics. I've been reading old Batman because I've never read any Batman really ever prior to starting New 52 back in 2011. And we're doing this Grant Morrison Batman read. So I was like, well, I don't want to only be reacting to Grant Morrison's Batman. I want to react to other people's Batman. And so I was like, well, there's a lot of specific parts of Batman I really want to read. I want to read that Earthquake era. Was it called Cataclysm? I don't know. I mean, I have a Batman guide, which I need to update, but I think that's that era. So I'm really interested in reading that. I kind of want to read a little bit of the stuff that comes right after Nightfall. I really want to read Nightwing from the 90s. I have all of Jim Balin's Catwoman run, totally, because I was going to bind it, and I've never read it. So I have all these parts of Batman I want to read. So as usual, when I'm indecisive about something, I'm like, let's just start at the start. So I started with the official kind of start of post-Krisis Batman, which is really year one in Batman, and then Detective Comics kind of You could say that the division really happens when Millennium hits, because it's the first story that everybody's got to participate in post-crisis continuity, but I started a little bit before that because there are some elements of post-crisis that come before Millennium. So I've been reading like 4 to 10 Batman issues every night and live tweeting about it. And there it is high camp, whether it's deliberately high camp and they're like dancing on a giant roulette wheel, or it's high camp because it's so grim that it's ridiculous. Last night I read one where he's fighting Ratcatcher and he like throws the Batarang and a rat dives in front of Ratcatcher to catch the Batarang. And it was supposed to be really grim, but I'm like alone sitting on the futon in my house. It's midnight and I'm like cackling because it is so ridiculous. I don't know if I'm going to make it reading every Batman title all the way from that point up until the 2000s, but I'm really enjoying it so far. And if you like this segment of Crushing Comics Live, I could actually pre-prep the covers of the stuff that I've read that I really liked in the past week and give some recommendations for older reads too. Plus an update on our Household X-Men read, which has been ongoing for 3 years now. We are on the cusp of the 1990s. We read an issue tonight that was from December 1989. We're almost there. So we are at the Excalibur 11. We're right at the start of the Cross Time Caper. We're in the middle of the Madripoor arc with Karma and Wolverine and the single digits of Wolverine, and we've just finished Inferno. So we read Jubilee's debut in Uncanny X-Men 244, which means I kind of have a little lull of like 12 issues to get through now, and then we're going to read Atlantis Attacks, which if you know me from Facebook comic stuff, you know I love Atlantis Attacks. So we might read the whole thing in the omnibus rather than just reading the X-Men chapters, because this is like my dream. I have a child who wants to read Atlantis Attacks. But she loves the X-Men. And, you know, I often debate, like, did I make her love the X-Men, right? Because you don't want to be that parent. But the thing is, there's all these books everywhere in the house. She has her choice. Like, there's plenty of things she reads that I don't like. There's plenty of things I've tried to get her to like. I tried to get her into Alpha Flight. That didn't work. She loves X-Men, and she loves the characters, and she loves talking about it and discussing it and debating it. And so we read X-Men. And I skip things that won't be super appropriate, or sometimes we discuss why they weren't appropriate, which is a great learning tool. I think people with kids, like, avoid talking about certain things, whether it's like certain comics or certain TV shows or whatever, because they're like, oh, that plot's too adult. That has a drug plot. I don't want my 8-year-old to have a drug conversation. Guess what, y'all? When we were young and we were watching TV, how do you think we learned all the dialogue around drugs and what not to do with them and to be concerned about them? Because there were very special episodes of things. You can't overprotect your kids, but at the same time, you should be there to have the conversation with your kids if you can. I have the privilege of a lot of time with my daughter, and I've always made it a point to do that. So we'll read a comic about drugs. I mean, they're farming poppies. I had to explain opium. But better for me to explain it in a way that makes sense and in a way that gives her a fictional framework for why it could be bad than for her to just kind of like go off and get the wrong information somewhere else. And that's my approach to a lot of parenting. All right, now we come to this week's new releases. Here's the thing. If they were all on Preview's website, I could go through all of the covers with you too. But because DC Comics are temperers, they're disruptors, it's not all on the Previews website, so I can't go through all the covers with you on the Previews website until I figure out a better system. So I'm going to start with going through the DC Comics pulls and not pulls for next week, but I haven't read them yet, clearly, so I'm going to be fast. Batman and Fortnite, I'm not reading it. Fortnite confuses me. I did play it a couple of times. I just think it's weird that like every fictional universe will play in Fortnite and he's like fighting Snake Eyes, but Thanos has been there. It's wild. Kids are wildin'. Is that something I can say as an old person? Do I dab now? Anyway, so if it's been good, tell me. Like, I will read any good comic. If you can legit be like Fortnite's Batman comic is great, I will go and pull that comic book. But I was like, I don't know if I need to read this. Catwoman 32, Ram V's Catwoman run has been like a roller coaster going up. Every month, it's a little bit better than the last month. It's probably my top DC pick for this week coming up. It's just been really, really solid. I don't know off the top of my head what issue he jumped on, but if you just start reading it from wherever Joel Jones ends, just pick it up from Infinite Frontier. It's been really enjoyable. I highly recommend it. Great art. The Flash 771. Flash has been kind of marginal. It's like Flash is going through time. He was like, I forget, is it Wally who's going through time and Barry's back in regular time or the other way? But one of them was going to quit. Right. Wally was going to quit, and now he's stuck through time. It's cute. It's one-shotty. I think you got to kind of go back to basics on Flash after a run as long as Williamson's run. It's not at the top of my poll, but the art has been good. I'm still enjoying it. The last issue, actually, 770 was really, really good. He went back kind of Quantum Leap style. Every time he goes through time, he winds up in the body of another speedster, and he goes back and he winds up in the body of the original Flash, the Golden Age Flash, and they're fighting Nazis, and it was like really, 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 really good. Okay. Infinite Frontier Secret Files. This is a digital-only comic, and it is a secret weapon from DC right now. Every one of them has been great. Joshua Williamson is co-writing them. It's in the form of Bones. Director Bones is reading the file of somebody, and then we go on a little adventure with them. Lots of wonderful little uncovered moments with DC heroes that are not getting their own books right now. I really rate it. It's really good. Legends of the Dark Knight is collecting what was a digital first series that was originally done by, I want to say Derek Robinson, but now different creators are taking a shot. It's just the new digital first Batman book. It seems like DC's really committed to having a digital first book for all their major heroes, which is great. I endorse it. But I'm reading them in digital first because I read everything digital. But this will be the first physical issue. It was like a decent Riddler Joker story. I don't think it was anything to like write home to your folks about, but it was fun. If you like Robinson's art and if you like Riddler and Joker, it was fine. It was strong. Nightwing number 81. I am coming around on Taylor's Nightwing. The art, of course, from Redondo is gorgeous. And actually, I think Redondo is colored by Adriano Lucas, who I was talking about from Birthright earlier. It's beautiful. Issue 80 was so beautiful. So I'm in on that. Some people are like over the moon about it. I still think it's a little bit basic. I'm like, who is Nightwing in this run, Taylor? Except for he's altruistic and he has a nice ass. Like, give me a little bit more. So maybe we're going to get more, but the last issue is definitely the best one yet. And it is, again, super, super gorgeous. Represent, number 1, is coming out physically. This is another digital first. It's not superheroes. Okay, I made that mistake. It's kind of like semi-historical tales, I think primarily of Black and African-American people. Maybe it's gone on to have different kinds of representation. I dropped it early on. It was fine. I think if you're going to do historical comics, which I actually really like it can't just be like a platitude. It's got to really be like a good story that makes me want to go and learn more about that historical, or more about that person or whatever. So Represent, it was fine. I mean, pick up the number 1. If you like that kind of stuff, pick it up and see what you think. I don't read Scooby-Doo, sorry. Static season number 1. I never read Milestone back in the 90s. I really wanted, that's one of the reading projects I want to do. My buddy Vincent Foss is like gearing me up, trying to get me to do it. I'm like, no, I don't need more books on my shelf. But I'm interested in Milestone coming back. I think there are a lot of good beats in the big Milestone number 0 spectacular that DC released and then released again. So I'm going to read Static, even though I don't always like Vita Ayla. At this point, their New Mutants has given me a lot more benefit of the doubt to try their other titles. Then we also have Supergirl World of Tomorrow, which is coming from Tom King. Tom King, you never know what you're going to get, man. Sometimes they're a great book out of the gate. Sometimes it takes 9 issues to get to the point. You just never know. I don't know if I ever needed Tom King to write Supergirl. I'm really afraid it's going to be like another Tom King does war crimes book only about Supergirl, but we're going to try. We're going to try. Superman Red and Blue. I'm real close to a drop on this. I don't think that this anthology format is giving any favors to people writing Superman. I think every story is the same. It's like, and then I rescued somebody. Oh, thanks. Oh, thank you for helping me be Superman. Like there has maybe been 1 or 2 stories out of 3 issues so far that I really was like, wow, that was great. And they were both in the first issue. So yeah, I'm not really into it. I'm probably going to read 1 more issue and then I'm probably going to give up. And then finally, Truth and Justice number 5. Truth and Justice, yet another digital first series. You already heard me talk about it earlier in the episode. Let's see, who is in this issue? So this is the physical collection, and actually it's the physical collection of the one that just wrapped up digitally. They finally caught up. So it's the Batwoman issue. It's like a Batwoman story. Like I can't say that I recommend it, but you know, if you've been waiting for Batwoman, there's some Batwoman. Okay, so now we're going to talk about Marvel and other polls. And I'm like losing my voice. I'm going to take a breath. Everybody, let's have a moment of zen while I drink some water because I've been talking for 57 minutes and 10 seconds. Okay, everybody hydrate. I think I'm going to try to share my screen. And if it's a disaster, it's a disaster, okay? We're just going to try it and see how it goes. So, we're going to share screen. Share screen. Chrome. Oh boy. We're just going to share the whole window. Okay. Chrome has lost permission. Hold on. Technical difficulties. Share screen. Window. Share. No, Chrome doesn't like me anymore. Okay. I guess we're not. I'll try one more time, y'all. This is my excuse to not talk for a minute. Can you tell? Share. There we go. Oh, look at that. Look at me making oh no. Why would I want to cover my face up? I did all this hair for you. Okay, this is good, right? This is a good balance? Okay. So this is last week's releases. Let me get to this week. All right, let's talk about it and be quick because been a lot of talk. Compass, number 1. It says Greg Rucka presents. It's not by Greg Rucka. It's by Robert McKenzie and Dave Walker. So I don't know. I don't understand if it's an extension of... Can you see this now? No, we're in the wrong window. Hold on. Okay, so I can't open new windows. I've got to stay in the... Oh, it wants to open in a new window. Okay, hold on. We're going to make this work. You know, as somebody who does this professionally, like I'm a client manager professionally, so I do a lot of screen sharing and like talking professionally. Why won't it let me stream this window? I'm really self-conscious about when things aren't perfect when they're sharing and stuff like this, because professionally I do it and it's perfect. So when there's these little moments, like sometimes when we're doing This Week in X, they'll be like, oh, Peter, you should pull up that. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do it if it's not going to be perfect. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to have to try to do this again in the future because it's only letting me share one tab at a time. And so that way, every time I click into a book, it's launching a new window and it's just going to be a nightmare. So we are going to keep it moving. Okay, Compass from Image. I don't really get it. Like, it's presented by Greg Rucka, but it's not an old guard book. I don't really understand. Let's see. What's the next one? Home. I do enjoy Home. It's kind of a story about immigration into the United States, but also kind of superpowers in a kind of mutant-y way. It's by Julio Anta, who is in one of the comic book groups that I frequent. It's been really fun and enjoyable. I've been liking it. I'm really looking forward to reading another issue. We've got some Jupiter's Legacy Requiem. I'm certainly not going to start reading Jupiter's Legacy now. Radiant Black, I dropped. Here's the thing. This like giant mecha stuff, this whole, I don't know what the genre is called, the whole like people in suits, but sometimes they fight monsters, but sometimes it's a robot, but then also sometimes they're Power Rangers. Is there a word for that whole genre? I don't know. I never was into it as a kid. And so when I read it now, I don't have any base level affinity, which doesn't mean that I shouldn't like it at all. Like I read a lot of comics that I didn't have an existing affinity for, but the genre or the comic, and I've grown to like it now. But I just cannot get excited about them. And Radiant Black is, I think, like so marginal. It just doesn't really, it's this guy, he wants to be a writer, but he's not doing that well at it. And also he's gotten this thing and now he's a Power Ranger. I need you to do a little bit more, but maybe that's just because I don't have like an existing affinity, and that's fine. I'm going to see if I can do this screen sharing thing one more time because it's vexing me. I'm going to go to security and privacy. I'm going to go to screen recording. Oh, look, this is not so bad. Okay, I can... Oh no, it wants to quit Chrome. Well, unfortunately, I can't quit Chrome because that will break all of this. But I have figured out how we're going to do it the next time. So we're going to work on it. Tokusatsu. Oh, hi, chicken. It's somebody's actual screen name. I'm just not just calling somebody a chicken. Tokusatsu. So I don't really have pre-existing affinity for that. I haven't read Silver Corn yet, which is the horror anthology mag from Image. I really want to read that, so I'll probably catch up on that this week. I've dropped Stillwater. I just didn't get the point. It's like, again, if you're doing a comic that 100 people have already done, which is like people go to a town, but the town is secret and they can't get out of the town, then like do better, like make it more. So even though I like Zdarsky, it's just like I'm not giving extra credit for people for doing the same thing in the same boring way, and that's how it felt to me. Time Before Time, I haven't read number 1 yet. A lot of time I'll save the number 1 issue until the number 2 issue comes out, so I'm excited to read Time Before Time this week. I dropped Ultra Mega. I thought it was super, super gross, offensive, and disgusting in the first issue. I know some people are into it. Again, I don't have a Tokusatsu existing affinity, so I think that was part of it, but it also had some stuff that to me played out really sexist. And some people didn't feel that way. I know a lot of women who like the book, but I didn't like the book, so I actually found it viscerally disturbing. I wish I had not read it. So that's Image for this week. Not a lot of stuff I'm super... And then, Walking Dead's recolored book, if you're into that kind of thing. So Dark Horse this week, I am really loving Grendel's Devil's Odyssey. It's been really fun. If you've never read Grendel before, it doesn't matter. It starts from scratch. It explains all the things you need. He's just this kind of like interstellar robot symbiote guy who gets sent to different planets to see if they're going to be habitable or not. So pretty much the same plot as that Darkwing series from Heavy Metal that I was talking about. But it's just really fun. The art is great. It's got a great wry, ironic voice to it. I really have enjoyed it. It's one of my favorite comics. I'm happy that it is back. Somebody was saying there's a twist in the most recent Radiant Black. I read that one too. It's just boring. Kyle Higgins for me does not have that excitement level. I just, so I keep trying people until they click. But what I'm trying to learn here in 2021 is I don't have to keep trying the same series over and over again until it clicks. If I don't like a series, sometimes it's fine to just not like a series and move on with my life. House of Lost Horizons is in the Magnolaverse. I haven't read it yet, so I'm excited to check it out. There's a new series of Norse mythology. I don't know. I guess number ones are good for everybody, so they're restarting it with number one, but it's Craig Russell adapting the Neil Gaiman Norse mythology novel. The first series was really great. I think they just released an collected edition, so I'm excited about that. From IDW this week, I have been sucked back in by G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. It's on issue 283. It is an extension of the original Hama series, and for some reason I'm reading it. I just was curious, because Hama wrote a lot of one-shotty things recently that I really liked, and he wrote that great Iron Fist series. So I was like, oh, maybe I will read this G.I. Joe comic book. Now I'm reading G.I. Joe. So what are you going to do? The last issue is actually really interesting, and Jinx is on the cover of this, my all-time favorite G.I. Joe. So I'll report back next week. Godzilla, I'm not really into. Sonic the Hedgehog. I am technically pulling Star Wars High Republic Adventures and all the Star Wars Adventures books. I have not read any of them yet because I keep saying I'm going to read them with the kid, but then I don't, and then it's late at night and I'm like, oh, maybe I should read one, and then I get guilty. So I don't know. Eventually I'm going to catch up. Hey, it's time for Marvel. I read every Marvel book, sometimes to my detriment. So quickly, Alien has been dumb. I don't recommend it. Salvador Larroca's art is so stiff. The story is not exciting. I don't see how you could have aliens in near-Earth orbit about to come down to Earth and not have fun with this franchise, but Philip Kennedy found a way. Captain America annual. It's going to be another one of these Infinite Destiny annuals. I thought that they were going to be alternate reality things, but they're not alternate reality things. And the first one for Iron Man 2 weeks ago was amazing because they're all kind of like dealing with a character from another comic. So it's kind of almost a little bit like Acts of Vengeance. I don't know if that's going to keep up, but I'm in because the first one was great. We also have, Demon Days. Mariko, I don't read alternate universe comics from Marvel. I have plenty of other things to read, so Free and Tyler will read it and tell me how it is. We have Fantastic Four 33. That book is garbage. I'm sorry, I said I wasn't going to be mean. Dan Slott writes every character terribly except for the Thing. Just because he's good at writing Thing, it doesn't mean he should write a whole comic. It's mean-spirited towards every character. I do not recommend it. I know there's people who like classic Fantastic Four who's like, the gang's all back, but it doesn't work for me if you are going to just be mean about all of the characters. And I don't just mean, we'll talk about this in a future episode. This whole idea of like comics have to be moral. Like, oh, I only want to read characters doing good things and never double-crossing stars. No, screw that. I don't want every character to be moral. That's stupid. I want an author to treat the characters like they have a life on the page and they do things consistent with the life that we've known them to have on the page, and Slott is not doing that. Then there's a bunch of Heroes Reborn stuff. I'm not reading any of that. I read all alternate universe stuff after the fact. If anybody tells me it was good, I'll read it on Unlimited. Mighty Valkyries, which has been amazing. It's got that beautiful Mattea de Lewis art. Oh my gosh, he's like my all-time favorite right now. He does that beautiful, lifelike, glowing artwork. And Torun Grönbeck, I think, adds a lot to Jason Aaron as a co-writer. I really, I've read a lot of Jason Aaron comics in the last decade, and there's something about having Torun Grönbeck co-write with him where there's just a different feel, and I enjoy it. Miles Morales Spider-Man, it's called the Clone Saga, but it's a very different kind of Clone Saga. It's not just a repeat of 90s Clone Saga, so it's been good, and I like Saladin Ahmed's stuff. New Mutants, of course, is part of the X-Men Gala, so we'll be talking about it on the show. Planet Size X-Men is hopefully going to make this whole Gala thing worthwhile, because it's been pretty boring so far. So we'll be talking about it on the show. Star Wars by Charles Soule's been really good, I have to admit. I'm not really into this big War of the Bounty Hunters thing, though, because it's doing this thing where it's like, we're going to insert this big plot that you think that they would talk about in the movie, but it's so big, but they're never going to say it in the movie because the movie was made in 1985, and so we can't talk about it because the movie's already been made. I think it's going a little too big. I think these Star Wars comics that work in between the movies do better when they go a little smaller on the stories. That's why Star Wars has worked for me thus far. I'm afraid the scope's getting too big, but we'll see. I read it every week. week. We'll see. Venom number 35, aka issue 200, the last issue in Donny Cates' run. It'll be a Venom issue. Like, Venom's been fun. I like that he's brought so much new stuff to him, but it's kind of like, I don't know what cap you're going to put on it after the end of, what was that event? King in Black. So, you know, it'll be fine. And X-Core, which is more Gala. Guess what, y'all? I'm losing my voice at this point. This has been a lot of talking. I appreciate you hanging on for it. I think I'm not going to go through for my indie polls for this coming week because I have to go and retool a little bit and figure out how to do this a little faster with some images, make it snappy, maybe live music. So you know I said I was going to talk about new trade releases. Let me just cover that as my last thing. Looking through the trade releases, there's really not a lot to recommend except for these. DC has a new collection of Batman out, and it is the collection of Batman, Tynion's Batman, starting with issue 101. So it's very pick upable. If the Joker War was kind of not your thing, or you roll your eyes at Joker or whatever, this is enjoyable, and I really rate it, and I've enjoyed it, and I think it's the part that made me think Batman is my #1 book of 2021, which is still a weird thing to say. So if you haven't read Batman yet and you're a collected edition reader, pick up the Batman that's out this week. I highly recommend it. From Marvel, there's that Heroes Reborn omnibus, which is all of the Pocket Universe post-Onslaught stuff. Come on, y'all. Really? Are you really going to put that omnibus on your shelf? This is, you don't need everything, okay? I have everything, and I'm here to tell you, you don't need everything. What you do need, though, is the Power Pack Omnibus. We love Power Pack in this house. It's like a dream that we're getting Power Pack Volume 2. I can't believe that it's real. But also, if you're not going to chip in for like 30-plus classic Power Pack issues, Power Pack Powers That Be trade paperback is out this week, which was Ryan North's Power Pack series that came out already this year. It was originally going to be part of Outlawed, but they delayed it, but it's still kind of tied into Outlawed. It was really good. For a while, it was my #1 comic on top of Batman. That's how much I enjoyed it. So if you like Power Pack, and it's not just for kids, it's Ryan North in full ridiculous Squirrel Girl mode. So if you like that, get it. And then also the second arc of I'm trying to read too many things at once. Donny Cates' Thor. Did I like that second arc? I did, yes, because it was the art about Donald Blake. It was really, really fun. I think it kind of pulled out of the eye roll qualities of the first arc that it had, where like it didn't have enough plot. This felt like it had plot, and it was also big and outrageous. It collects a lot of issues, 7 through 14, and I really, really liked it. During the time those issues were coming out, Thor was one of my top Marvel books. So I'm not going to go through indie polls or indie releases. I got to retool a little bit. If you watch this live, I would love it if you come back at some point and leave a comment about your favorite thing, your least favorite thing, or just say in the chat. I can read the chat after the fact too. If you're watching it after the fact, what was useful about this? What was less than useful? What would you want me to talk about more? So I'm so happy to do this experiment. I don't know that I'm going to come back and do it every week necessarily. I'm gonna probably take a lot of your advice, see if people enjoyed it, and then maybe I'll retool a little bit and come back and try something a little bit different. I did something really similar with my what was that thing called? Crushing Comics Quick Collected Guide. I tried it out. People gave me a lot of good feedback, but that also took, honestly, about 12 hours to produce. So I'm like, I could do a new comic guide, or I can make a video that people mildly liked and got watched by about 300 people. The comic guides are more useful. So that one went back on the shelf for a while. But this only takes an hour if I don't have to do too much preparation. So I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to get to chat with all of you live. I kind of miss the ability to like see live feedback and talk to you in real time, because we don't do any of our shows on the channel as live broadcast right now. So there's a good chance that I would bring this back and do it some more once I get a chance to watch it back and see what worked, and also figure out all of the screen sharing, images, stuff. So now I'm going to play you out. Thank you so much for watching the first ever pilot episode of Crushing Comics Live here on Crushing Comics. And let's see if I can play us out.